Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your time, Maharaj. Can you please let us know how did you came in Krishna consciousness?
Well, nothing very dramatic. I had a friend in my class when I was in college whose family was involved in Krishna consciousness, and he was the one who took me to the temple, introduced me to devotees, and gave me books, Srila Prabhupada's books. And slowly, by reading these books and meeting the devotees and asking various questions, I developed a clear understanding of the philosophy, and eventually I became convinced that this was the path of truth, this was the path I wanted to follow in my life.
Can you elaborate more on it? Like, I heard some of the lectures, some of the devotees telling us you went on reading books when you were traveling to. So can you please elaborate more on it, if possible? So what was your experience like? How did your friend took you there, and you started reading books about it?
Well, yes, of course. The first thing he did was to give me some books, which I started reading. But naturally, when I was reading those books, I had many questions, many doubts, and he would take me to different devotees to have discussions where I would ask many questions. And I was always a good reader, so I would read books. And even as I traveled, I would read. So therefore, I think reading and hearing from devotees was a very important part of my evolution in Krishna consciousness. And that gave me the conviction. And therefore, I decided eventually to surrender my life to this process and to the mission.
Great, thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, would you like to elaborate a little bit on the meeting of you with your Guru Maharaj? How did it started, and what are things what you have done when you were brahmachari, and what made you think that you should renounce your life completely and become a sannyasi?
Well, I became a brahmachari first. I was already a devotee for some time and I was working. And then I met the devotees, and then when I met His Holiness Radhanath Swami, I was convinced had the confidence to give up my material life and become a brahmachari. And since then, I have been trying to serve in some small way.
All right, thank you, Maharaj. Maharaj, the second question is, can you please let us know the project what you are handling at the Goa, the Belgaum project, the 450 acres land of Gokul Dham.
Gokul Dham.
Gokul Dham. Can you let us know more about it, its vision, how do you manage it, and what's the reason for going ahead on such a large scale for 450 acres, and how are you managing it?
The idea was not mine, it was Srila Prabhupada's idea, because Srila Prabhupada spoke about the principle of self-sufficiency, and he wanted us within ISKCON to have projects where we would live simply and think high. He advocated simple living, high thinking as something very practical and doable for all of us. So especially these things were possible and practical in farm communities. So he already set up a few communities during his lifetime, but he wanted that there should be many more such projects coming up everywhere, where the devotees would live very simply in harmony with nature, growing their own food, producing their own cloth and other basic necessities of life, and they would save their time and energy without distractions for Krishna consciousness. Because the life in the countryside is very pure, it's in the mode of goodness, it is very conducive to the development of Krishna consciousness for spiritual life. Life in the big cities, filled with its industries and shopping malls and the hustle and bustle of ordinary urban living, is full of distractions, temptations, and it is very hard for the ordinary practitioner of spirituality to be very firm and determined in this practice, living in such an atmosphere. So the rural areas with a strong emphasis on spiritual culture and simple living was just the perfect thing that Srila Prabhupada wanted us to do. Of course, Srila Prabhupada also wanted us to be in the cities, because that is where a vast number of people do reside today, and we need to stay there and bring out the message of Krishna to them. So he did not wish that we should abandon the cities so long as people are living in the cities. He wanted us to be there to preach to them. But he definitely wanted also such farm community projects which could be like beacon lights to the world at large, where we would illustrate, or we would demonstrate to the people of the world that it was possible to live life without the trappings of so-called modern civilization, that not everything that we consider really necessary was actually so, and that many of the things that we felt were necessities we could well do without, and indeed happily do without. So then we got this land in the outskirts of Belgaum in Karnataka, and we have started work in a small way. We are far from the stage of completion. We are still in the very preliminary stages of the project, despite having been there for some years. But we are convinced that as we go on, the project will develop, more and more devotees will join, and we hope that one day we will be able to please Srila Prabhupada with this project.
Thank you so much, Maharaj. The last question, in fact the second last question. Can you please let us know the relevance of Krishna Consciousness and Bhagavad Gita in current world?
Well, you see, Bhagavad Gita and Krishna Consciousness are sources of wisdom that are eternal. The Bhagavad Gita gives us knowledge that is not like the ordinary knowledge of this world, which changes with time. Although the knowledge of the Bhagavad Gita can be applied according to different times and circumstances in different ways, but the essential principles always remain the same. This is the difference between absolute knowledge and relative knowledge. So what Krishna spoke to Arjuna 5,000 years ago, and what Krishna spoke to the sun god many years before that, is equally applicable and valid today. In fact, I would say it is even more valid, because people nowadays are under stress, under forgetfulness of their goal of life. There is so much misery, quarrel, many other types of problems afflict life in the modern world today. So now the principles of Bhagavad Gita are very much valid, and the world would greatly benefit by taking shelter of these principles. Krishna Consciousness is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna Consciousness means to develop love for the Supreme Lord Shri Krishna. In a day when hatred prevails, where anger, destruction prevail, the principles of non-sectarian principles of pure love of Godhead, Krishna Consciousness, will be the ultimate panacea and the cure to all problems in the world today.
Great. Thank you so much for your kind words and nectaring words, Maharaj. The last question. What message, or in fact, what would be the message to the youth, how to get happiness in this world of quarrel?
By seeking happiness where it truly exists, and by avoiding seeking it where it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist in this world. True happiness doesn't exist here. It exists elsewhere on the spiritual platform. So if we repeatedly search for happiness in this material world, it is a futile endeavor, and we will never be able to attain success. Whereas if we, whilst living in this world and performing our duties in this world responsibly and sensitively, if we seek our real happiness in the things beyond this world, in spiritual life and Krishna consciousness, then we will make our life successful.
Right. Thank you so much for your kind words, wisdom words, Maharaj. Hare Krishna, Maharaj.
Hare Krishna.